I just watched Ma Baker, a movie on YouTube with Shelley Winters. It was pretty bad, but Robert Dern was in it and Robert De Niro. So it was interesting, but it was a B-grade movie. Anyway, what was I going to say? I went out walking today, and I went about, I can't remember, about 1.25 kilometres, and I started to feel it in my legs at the end, but it was good for me. I'm going to do it every day now, because I want to live to 120 at least, because I'm having a good time. I had to clean up the house today because every 3 months the landlord comes and checks me out to see that I haven't ruined anything. So I've got to act like a normal person when they come. But I'm allowed to smoke inside because I know the owner. You can't smoke anywhere in Australia now. It's real like they think it's bad for us or something. All right, back to my story. Fucking hell, what did I have? Oh, yeah, up in Brisbane, when my money ran out, I went and got, geez, I look dirty. Fuck, I haven't had a shower for 5 days myself. And I touched my face a lot and put cream on it, so it looks worse than it is. Anyway, I'm not here for a beauty contest. I went and got a job as a tray boy selling sweets in the cinema. I figured that was showbiz. The closest I ever got to showbiz when I was young was being a tray boy in the cinema. And you only got about 8% of what you sold. So it wasn't a great job, but you could see lots of movies for free if you talk to the usherettes, because you're only supposed to go in before interval. You weren't supposed to sit there all day, but I could sit there all day. So unfortunately, I saw a Jerry Lewis movie about 20 times. If that doesn't drive you mad, nothing will. So I thought I'd better start travelling again. And when I got some pay from the job, I played jukeboxes and I gambled at Brisbane racetrack and I visited noble old rundown movie theatres. And when me money ran out, I thought, what am I going to do? I'll hitch up north to Mackay and see Uncle Edgar. He had perpetual hiccups. So I went to visit poor Uncle Edgar. Now, I went via a town called Toowoomba. It's about 150 miles out of Brisbane. And when I was 11, my grandparents took me there to visit relatives. My cousins tried to teach me rugby union, but I didn't like it. I showed them how to drop kick properly because I'd always played Aussie rules when I was a kid. But they thought Aussie rules was sissy. But this current visit, I sweltered in the humidity and trudged around trying to find their house. Night fell and everything cooled and I got lost and I was hungry and I found a sports field with no grandstand. So I flaked out in the middle, went to sleep in the middle where street lights didn't reach. The dark made me feel safer. I awake to find a hot rod doing unmuffled figure eights 2 metres from me head. So I scurried away and I waited and I walked until I found a bus shelter and I stretched out on that bench until dawn. As I waited to cross the street the next morning, a big, beefy bloke pointed me out to his pal and he roared, "Hey, look at the bloody front row forward." They laughed. A front row forward in rugby league or rugby union is a real big, strong guy. So they were laughing at me for being skinny and I felt freakishly thin. Inferiority took root and I imagined the whole world thought the same. Hope of attracting a girl dissolved for 2 days until I remembered my magic line. So I drew a line on the pavement and stepped over it and began life afresh. That's a good trick, you know. If you've got a lot of problems, draw a line on the pavement, step over and forget what's behind you. Well, that's my theory. Since leaving Adelaide, I'd only seen 2 other hitchhikers, but in Queensland, every 100 miles I'd see someone. We picked up a bloke, an army bloke, who'd run away from the army. And then later on we picked up a woman with a baby heading home to her mum after a fight with a man. And me next hitch was I got a ride with a misery gut salesman who couldn't understand how I did not want a job. And as I got out, he tried to fill me up. So I slapped him on the side of the head, but not hard. In Queensland, you need a sleeping bag or tropical bugs crawl up your nostrils and cane toads sit on your face. Hang on, let me move this down. Fucking hell. Let me have a draw of me fag. I've been wasting fags since I've been doing this. I'm not the sort of guy to waste a cigarette, although I don't inhale much either. All right, in Queensland, sleeping bag, tropical bugs crawl up your nostrils and cane toads sit on your face. I turned 18 as soon as I got to Mackay, and I planned to stay with Uncle Edgar and his perpetual hiccups and eat for a week. But when I knocked on the door, my aunt said she must have been put off by my scruffy, long-haired appearance. And she said, "I'm sorry, but Uncle Edgar is too sick to see anyone. Sorry, but you can't stay." So that was the end of that. I was too proud to ask him for food, so I went south to Serena, a little town, but I couldn't find my other uncle's place either. So I headed back to Adelaide. Hitching was easy when there were no freeways. Cars had room on the verge to stop and pick you up. It took 9 very hungry days to get to Adelaide, and I knocked on Granny's door and she was happy to have me back. And I promised her I'd get a job. And then back in Adelaide, I found Kerouac's The Dharma Bums. I'm wondering, you know, that time, no, I didn't have the Dharma Bums by then. Yeah. I found a Dharma Bums paperback in a bookstall by Jack Kerouac. And after reading the cover blurb, I actually paid money for it. The pages inflamed a yearning to join those crazy Dharma-loving bums. But first I had to find some. When I had the price of a coffee, I'd bop down the stairs of the Jazz Cellar in Grenfell Place. There the cats might have been cool and the musicians with it, but nobody spoke to me and I wasn't very good at talking to people in those days. I am now, but back then I wasn't. And when the cellar closed at 2 a.m, I followed their sax player through the back alleys, hoping he'd lead to some communal pad where the cats would dig me. I'd been teaching myself to play a small flute, a plastic flute, real cheap one, and following at a distance through the silent morning, I began blowing the one tune I almost knew. It was a stumbling bebop, Maria, Maria, I just had a guy, Maria, Maria. Anyway, I was playing it the best I could from West Side Story, and this guy kept looking around, but it was dark and he never found me. My alienation back then came from lack of communication skills. I never instigated a conversation. Unaware of this, I thought that square society was the cause of my loneliness. But I never gave up hope my dreams would happen. It was just a matter of where and when. A week later, as I sunbaked on Granny's front porch, the local police sergeant called me over to his car and he told me to get in the back. And he handed me a John Martin store sales docket and he said, "Do you remember signing this?" I denied everything, but next day I fronted court and I was advised to plead guilty because I had no legal knowledge back then. And I was given 3 months for larceny of the 2 suits that I'd given to my 2 buddies. I wouldn't say who'd received the suits. Okay, the rest of this is Adelaide Gaol. So I'm going to sign off now and just put Adelaide Gaol bit on the end of this. Yatala Gaol in Adelaide, 1962. Tough guys in the yard played cards for tobacco or teased the weak. I was one of the weak, so I hated those concrete triangles and yearned to be back in my cell. I acted slightly psychotic so crims wouldn't pick on me. Back in my slot, I could relax and travel to other worlds by reading. After 3 weeks, I was given me hard labour and sent to the farm section to weed rows of vegetables and pitch hay. My muscles grew a little bit hard from doing press-ups in my cell. My cock was getting hard too, more than usual. One day after work, I glanced at a large tomato I'd pinched from the farm. It was lying there seductively, and the idea it might be juicy snuck into my vacant mind. It looked luscious, and although we'd never spoken, I acted impulsively and cut a slit in it. Without even asking her name, I got to work, keeping one eye on the door peephole. I didn't want to be caught by a screw while I was having one. If word got out I was a vegetarian, blokes would pick on me for being a fruit. After 15 seconds, I ground to a stop. It was too cold, not the right texture at all. Next morning, my dog had a rash. That vengeful vegan tomato had given me a citric acid burn. While chopping weeds, I noticed a new bloke called Elvis. He was about 20 years old, he was well built and seemed a bit simple. Blokes kidded him he looked like Elvis, and he did have full lips and long sideburns. I asked him, "How come they let you keep your sideburns? Everyone gets a haircut when they come in." And the kid said, I told him I was Elvis and I needed them. I said, "Do you know this one? Ooh, feel so bad, feel like a ball game on a rainy day." I gave my best Elvis imitation. The kid took it up and sang the next verse. "Ooh, baby, that's the way I feel." He was good. His vocal tone wasn't like E, but the mouthing and the soul was spot on. We moved along slowly, chopping weeds, and he said he was in for housebreaking. Time flew by, and we kept singing all day. Every few hours, bored crims would kid him. "Hey, Elvis, what was it like when you went in the army? Did the soldiers fuck you like they do here?" This was typical Aussie jail banter. Elvis was embarrassed, but he said, "No man like Colonel Tom Parker will kill any no-account fellow that tries that on his number one hit maker." And one day a crim said, "Well now, smart ass, the colonel ain't here, so kneel down and suck my dick." Then Elvis, he went into psycho mode. He beat the shit out of this bloke. He looked like he'd kill. And no one bothered him after that. After 4 weeks at Yatala, I was sent to Cadell Prison Farm on the River Murray, a low-security place with modern single cells and the best food I'd ever had. We got eggs delivered to our room in the morning, in whatever style we asked. It was a holiday camp. My body was becoming fit from pitching hay, and we dug potatoes and picked broad beans and become suntan. Everybody in jail has got a suntan. As soon as we saw someone with a suntan in the street, we'd say, He's been to jail. Because everyone out of suntan. One day I met this Mexican guy, and I said to him, "You look like Cantinflas, that Mexican actor in the movie Around the World in 80 Days. And after that, he adopted a Mexican accent. He said, "Si, senor, I hope I see you in Santa Kilda one day. In Melbourne, I live in a Santa Kilda. You can be looking for me in the snooker room." There was no TV in jails back then, but once a week we watched a Hollywood movie on the wall. And I remember one movie was Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter with Jane Mansfield and Tony Randall. Cantinflas said, "They always show us general exhibition stuff, never any crime." Yeah, that's to brainwash us into being good citizens. But not me. I'm going back to St Kilda and live off prostitutes. Yeah? How you going to manage that? I'm not going to be a hoon and make 'em fuck out all the time. I'm just going to find a nice one, get to be her boyfriend, live in her flat, eat her food, and be nice to her. Pros like to have someone nice when they come home after all their hard work. He was handsome enough to pull chicks, and we became good pals. We'd be laughing all day with our combined quirky humour. Another crim in Cadell was Barney the bear. He'd imitate like a chicken that had laid the biggest egg in the world. Barney often got teased about his short-sightedness, but his sense of humour was strong. He had cut a long dotted line tattooed around his neck with an actual dotted line. For that act of insanity, I had immense respect for him. I wonder if you're still alive, Barney, and what you made of your life. I spent the last 7 days loading bags of spuds onto trucks and was handed a train ticket to Adelaide and my release money of 4 pennies a day. With this amount, which would nowadays be about $65, I was ready to take on the world. Now I'd seek out that beatnik subculture. They had to be out there somewhere. I'll try big city Melbourne or maybe Sydney. And no one had tattoos. Oh, well, there's a lot of people had tattoos, but Crims would always tell you, don't get a tattoo. They're for mugs, because coppers can always identify you from your tattoos. Oh, yeah, one more thing. There was hammocks to sleep in Yatala. There weren't, in my wing, I don't know about the main jail, but I was in reception at Yatala for most of the time, and they had hammocks. And in the morning you had to fold the hammock up real neatly and arrange it in a certain way, or else you'd get some sort of punishment. So I left my hammock the way it was when I first got there, because I sure as hell didn't know how to fold it properly. So I slept on a blanket on the floor most of the time. But because I pretended I was in a Zen monastery, I didn't care. So most of the time in my cell, I was happy as a pig in shit. It was only out in the yard that I had to worry about stuff. And every night we'd get half a loaf of white bread, and in all jails. And there was no toothpaste. We used to clean our teeth with salt. And I cleaned my teeth with Bon Amy once before I was getting out, with Bon Amy to make them real white.